Neymar. The Women's Player of the Year, Carly Lloyd, Ayame Yama from Japan, and Celia Sasic in her final appearance for Germany.
Sausage.
Men's Coach of the Year, Pep Guardiola, Luis Enrique, and Jorge Sampaoli. No love for Jurgen Klopp yet.
It's okay. It's okay. This wouldn't have been his year anyway.
Women's Coach of the Year, Jill Ellis, Mark Sampson, and Norio Sasek. And Goal of the Year, Alessandro Florenzi, Wendell Lira, and Lionel Messi. And as someone noted on Twitter, Carly Lloyd scored from about the halfway mark in a World Cup final. Where is hers? That's really, at the end of the day, that's the only thing I would point out on this list. Everything to me is pretty standard otherwise.
Well, I will say this. I don't believe you could have had too many people arguing if the final three for the Ballon d'Or, other than all the Ronaldo and Madrid fans, couldn't it have legitimately been Messi, Neymar, and Suarez?
Absolutely.
I mean, because, actually I saw a breakdown earlier. If you break down Suarez to Ronaldo scored 5 more goals. Suarez had 7 more assists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's absolutely insane that Suarez, who's like the third guy at Barcelona, scored 40 goals and had 14 assists last year.
It's a fun place to be. Let's go rapid fire. Let me get your picks. Let's start Men's Player of the Year. Who are you taking?
I think it'll be Ronaldo again.
I think it's going to be Messi. Women's Player of the Year, Lloyd Miyama Sasic. I think Carly Lloyd.
I think Lloyd, that World Cup run is going to definitely put her over.
Sasic may get some sympathy votes being that she's retiring from the national team, but I think Lloyd's the pick.
That's her problem.
Men's Coach of the Year, Guardiola, Enrique Sampaoli. I'm kind of maybe leaning toward Enrique after he did the treble.
Yeah, I think it'll be Enrique. Guardiola just, bowing out earlier than they thought they would in the Champions League is going to knock Guardiola out. Sampaoli, great job. I mean, won the Copa, but I think it's going to be Enrique.
Women's Coach of the Year, Jill Ellis, Mark Sampson, Norio Sasic. I'm taking Mark Sampson.
Sampson's he's kind of a trendy pick, but I think Jill Ellis had a ton of pressure on her.
That's true.
And delivered.
There you go.
And call me a xenophobe. I'm not, because obviously I love England more than America anyway.
You love them so much.
I just think Jill Ellis.
What do you think? Have you seen any of the Goal of the Year nominees? Because I haven't, so I'm not going to give a pick here.
I'm just going to say Messi because it's Messi.
Sure. Our last news and notes story. This kind of came somewhat out of left field. Gary Neville is going to Valencia to be their new manager. The former Manchester United defender will be going at least until the end of the season. He had been a pundit at Sky Sports up till now. Valencia currently at 9th in La Liga, have not lived up to some of the aspirations they had coming into the campaign. His first game as head man will be against Lyon in the Champions League on December 9th. So there you go. There you go. But this is pretty interesting.
Rat face heading to Spain. Good for him. Good. Keeps him off of Sky Sports and gives Jamie Carragher the spotlight he so richly deserves. Now, this is being billed as a temporary move, as just, to get through the season. Neville, don't forget, Neville is an assistant for Woy on the England squad, and said this will not interfere with any of his preparations for Euro. And from what everything sounds like, this is just to get Valencia through the end of the season.
We're going to be keeping an eye out.
Maybe not a long-term thing here, but it does get him truly his first head coaching gig.
Gets him some chops. That's what it gets it.
Chops.
So that's going to do it for our soccer news on the week. Let's now head to our other big story of the week. And before we do, though, real quick, we know we like to make fun of the NFL a lot. We really, really do. So we won't, though, be afraid to mention Yazil Puig's incident at a bar a couple days ago. There may have been a physical altercation with his sister. We don't know. We're still trying to get all the details on that. But we'll be bringing you more as we know more. But we just want you to know that we will call everybody out that we can, especially when they do stupid stuff. Especially
and speaking of the NFL, didn't you send me something about the NFL earlier this week?
I pointed out it was like a tweet. It was during the show that they had gone, like, this is the longest they've gone in 11 years without someone being arrested, and it was 43 days.
Upwards of an entire month plus.
Good job, NFL.
Wow.
Good job.
Great job, NFL. Great job.
All right, so our actual other big story of the week is kind of, like I said at the beginning of the pod, a mishmash of stories. Of course, Wes is finding out just mere hours ago that head ball coach Mark Richt will be going to be the head coach of the Miami Hurricanes after being fired earlier this week from his position with University of Georgia, I should say. One of the interesting things, though, that came out of this, Wes, is that a lot of the players had something to say about it, but couldn't. They were banned after their meeting to find out Coach Rick's fate. They were led away by security officers. They were led away from media. And these were actual security personnel, so that they couldn't talk to the media. They were, according to this report by Athens Online, they were able to make limited remarks to reporters before guards stepped in. Senior linebacker Jordan Jenkins was among one of those who voiced his unhappiness with the decision to fire Richt after a 9-3 record this season and an overall mark of 145-51. I think this is a very interesting tactic, I guess we'll call it, by the University of Georgia, to basically keep its players away from talking to the media, and what they knew was a very unpopular decision. You could look at what happened in LSU this past weekend as a sort of similarity. We had heard, boosters leaking and higher-ups in LSU's athletics department leaking that they were going to get rid of Les Miles. That didn't go over very well. And to the point where it seemed like in the third quarter of the game this Saturday is when they decided, no, okay, well, I guess we'll actually keep him, because doing so would be terrible publicity. So all of a sudden, Wes, you have these two huge things by universities trying to control the message, and neither one looking that great in the process. Georgia, by trying to limit the players from talking to the media in what is obviously a very difficult situation for them. It seemed like there was a lot of support for Coach Richt, and I can certainly understand why. And then for Les Miles, LSU trying to get the people on their side, and then when they realized, oh God, no one is on our side when we fire Les Miles, we got to change course now.
Well, just to start off, tough way for Coach Mark Richt to go out of Georgia, a guy given 15 years of his life, to basically turning around a Georgia program which had really fallen on some hard times. Coach Mark Richt was known as a great guy. Does missionary work in the off season. Very strong Christian-based values, and he instilled a sense of calm over the Georgia program through his time there. Won the SEC East 6 times, won the SEC at least 2 or 3 times. His best year was when Todd Gurley was a freshman, and they took Alabama literally down to the 1-yard line in the SEC title game. And Ed, just to show you how inches matter in college football, if Georgia had gotten into the end zone on that play, they would have beaten Alabama. They would have most likely gone and beaten Notre Dame for the national championship because that Notre Dame team was not good.
Yeah.
And Ed, right now, no one is thinking one bit about firing Mark Richt because he won a national title.
Yeah.
I think that was the downfall of Coach Mark Richt was, Georgia sat there, and for that run of dominance the SEC went on, Georgia had to watch rivals, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Florida and Auburn being big-time rivals for Georgia. They had to watch them win multiple national championships. Now, Auburn only won it once, but then they turned around and got back to another one. But they had to watch them win national championships while every year they were just falling a game short, it seemed like.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I'm not going to crush the firing of Coach Mark Richt. But at the same time, I'm not going to say it was a great decision, but I'm not going to kill the decision because, I also do feel that after a while, guys turn a little stale. And, in response to all the Georgia players who are suddenly coming to the defense of Coach Mark Richt, if you guys had shown this much fight during the season,
maybe
things might have been different. Everybody loves to be a badass when a decision's already made and it doesn't really matter what you think. Everybody loves to be the badass then. If you had stepped up when it mattered, this probably doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But that said, Coach Mark Richt, he leaves Georgia heading to Miami, which now here's my deal. As a Georgia fan, I could somewhat see where, okay, this isn't a terrible decision to let him go. As a Miami fan, it is a fantastic hire because, Miami needs credibility. They need it quickly. They have made some really bad coaching hires since Butch Davis left. And in Coach Mark Richt, you bring in a guy who that record's impeccable at Georgia in the SEC. You bring him now to Miami, where he is an alumni. Played for Howard Schnellenberger back in the late 70s, early 80s. Knows the Miami way, understands the school, understands the culture in Miami. You bring a guy in who, by the way, recruits the hell out of South Florida, by the way, at Georgia. You're going to bring him in. Now he's got something to prove as well. This could finally be the hire that maybe pushes Miami toward where everyone thought they were going to be, which was being a dominant team, at least in the ACC. I think the Atlantic or the Coastal. I can't ever keep up with it. I think they're in the Coastal.
So about media and universities.
Yes.
Would you like to answer any of the actual questions I put forth to you a few minutes ago?
Well, as for the whole Les Miles thing, I think what you had an AD and you had a set of boosters who wanted Les Miles gone. That obviously was not the will of the LSU fan base. Mm-hmm. You just had a small handful of guys who were trying to push something through. And the problem that they messed themselves up with, if they had axed Les Miles after the third consecutive loss, mm-hmm. they could have gotten away with it.
Yeah.
But they gave him another week, and they gave him a home game.
Yeah.
And then he got carried off on his players' shoulders. And he got a massive standing ovation at Tiger Stadium. And now all the pressure was on you because no one wanted to get rid of Les Miles after he beat Texas A&M.
Well, my question is why even leak it to the press to begin with? I mean, that to me is where everything goes wrong. Why even try to put this out there? Like you had to know, like someone had to know that Miles still had, a lot of support from Baton Rouge and that whole area, and for what he's done. I mean, you talked about